Okay, this lesson is 3.2. The lesson is called Opposites and Absolute Value of Rational Numbers. In the last lesson, you learned what rational numbers are. They're basically all of the numbers, positives, negatives, zero, and all the fractions and decimals. This lesson will be kind of a review because you already know what opposites are and you already know what absolute value is. So now we're going to just apply what you know about opposites and absolute value and apply it to rational numbers, okay? So we're going to start by putting rational numbers on a number line, okay? So let's just do that first. That might be a little new. Let's place all of these numbers on the number line, okay? We're going to start with 4.5. I'm going to start with 0. And I'm going to go to the right because this is a positive number, 4.5. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. But then this 0.5 means I go halfway between 4 and 5 because that says 4.5. So 4.5 is right about there. And I'm going to label that 4.5. I labeled it kind of small because more numbers are going to need to fit in there. So that's about halfway, 4.5, right between the 4 and the 5, okay? Now let's do negative 4.5. Again, I'm going to start at 0, and now I'm going to go to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to go a little more, halfway between the negative 4 and the negative 5. Negative 4.5. Okay. Let's now put 0.5 on the number line. That's a positive number. I'm going to start at 0, and I'm not going to go all the way to 1. There is no 1 in the ones place. There's a 0 there. So this says 0.5, which is basically a half. So it's somewhere in between the 0 and the 1, right in the middle, halfway. So that spot right there is 0.5. Okay, remember, you can pause the video anytime if you want to write this down and look carefully and slow it down, okay? Now let's go to negative 0.5. I'm going to start at 0. This time I'm going to move to the left. I am not going to go all the way to the 1. There is no negative 1 here. So I'm going to go halfway between 0 and negative 1, about right there, halfway between the 0 and the negative 1, and that's negative 0.5. Okay, so I have 0.5 on the positive side, and I have negative 0.5 on the negative side of 0. All right, let's do 3.5. This is a mixed number. It has a whole number 3 and then a fraction half. So I go from 0 and I go 1, 2, 3. That's the 3 part. But then another half. So halfway between 3 and 4, that is 3.5. So I'm going to label that now 3.5. Okay. Next, I'm going to do negative 3.5. Starting at 0, I'm going to go to the negative side, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, and then I'm going to go another half. So halfway between negative 3 and negative 4, that's negative 3.5. Okay. Now I'm going to do 4.8. That's positive. From 0, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. 4.8 is closer to 5 than 4.5. So it's going to be somewhere right here because 8 is bigger than 5. So it's even closer to the 5. That is 4.8, this dot here. Okay. Not all the way to the 5, but closer to the 5 than the 4.5 is. 4.8 is closer to 5 than 4.5. Now we're going to do negative 4.8, same thing. We're going to go from 0 to negative 1, -2, -3, -4, not quite all the way to the 5, but closer than the -4.5. So that's -4.8 here. Okay, I'm going to zoom in on that just a little bit for you. This camera doesn't zoom very well. Can you see that? Maybe a little bit better. You can pause this now that it zoomed in a little bit. Okay, that is putting rational numbers on a number line. We're going to practice that a little bit more in the next lesson. Right now, what we're going to do is talk about opposites and absolute value. Okay, and you know what those things mean. So hopefully this will be a little bit of a review. So opposites, let's review what does opposite mean, okay? Opposites are two numbers that are the same distance from 0 and on opposite sides of 0. So you see 4.5 and -4.5 are the same distance away from 0, only on opposite sides of 0. So what that means is 4.5 and -4.5 are opposites. And you'll see the same thing about 0.5 and -0.5. 0.5 is the same distance away from 0 as -0.5, only they're on opposite sides. So again, 0.5 and -0.5 are opposites. 3.5 and -3.5 are opposites. -4.8 and 4.8 are opposites. Opposite numbers are the same distance away from 0, only on opposite sides of 0. So this is true for rational numbers the same way it's true for integers. Having the decimal or fraction doesn't change the way opposites work. Okay? Same with absolute value. The definition of absolute value also is the same. Absolute value is the number's distance away from 0. Therefore, absolute value is always positive. So if we want to count the steps, like 3.5 and -3.5, if we were going to count the steps, it would be the same number. 1, 2, 3.5. 1, 2, 3.5. The distance is the same. It's the direction that's different. Okay, the distance is the same. 1, 2, 3.5. 1, 2, 3.5. So the absolute value is the same, 3.5. Okay, so if we come down here, we can see the absolute value of 4.5 is 4.5. The absolute value of -4.5 is 4.5. Always positive. The absolute value of 0.5 is 0.5. The absolute value of -0.5 is 0.5. The absolute value of 3.5 is 3.5. The absolute value of -3.5 is 3.5. The absolute value of 4.8 is 4.8. The absolute value of -4.8 is 4.8. Okay, because it's a distance, they're always positive. Okay, opposites, the opposite of negative is positive and the opposite of positive is negative, but absolute value always positive no matter what. Okay, and that is lesson 3.2, opposites and absolute value of rational numbers.